Welcome to the Thriving Farmer Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Kilpatrick. Our mission is to inspire, educate, and celebrate sustainable farming. We believe that you can build a profitable, sustainable farm that gives you true farm freedom. Join us as we talk to farmers, innovators, educators, and entrepreneurs to glean their top takeaways in business and life. Hey, Thriving Farmers. Michael Kilpatrick here with yet another episode of the Thriving Farmer Podcast. Today I've got a special guest, Julie Rawson, who is the co-owner of Many Hands Organic Farm in Barre, Massachusetts. After growing up on a conventional farm in Illinois, Julie, along with her husband, Jack, transitioned to organic farming in 1982, where she has become a pioneer in soil fertility and carbon sequestration. Julie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
So give me a little bit of a kind of a background here. Obviously, you've been farming for a long time. But before, like when you were in Illinois, what did conventional farming at that point look like?
Well, I was born in 1953. We moved out to our farm in 1956 when I was 3 years old.
Okay.
And that was, right when they had decided to bring back all those nasty chemicals from World War II, and they needed to keep making money on them, so they sold them to farmers.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that was really the beginnings of the conventional farming movement, really.
Yes.
Right after the war in that period. And my father was a large animal veterinarian, so he wasn't a full-time farmer, but he did have like a couple hundred hogs that he raised, and we had some beef cattle from time to time, and we had a large garden and things like that. So we had the farm, but his main work was as a large animal veterinarian. And I think one of the things that saved his life was that he wasn't doing all of the field work, the so-called, planting of the crops and those kinds of things. He hired our neighbors to do that because he didn't have time to do that. He just had time to manage his hogs. And a lot of the farmers of his era, his age group, they started dropping dead at right around the age of 70, and usually from liver cancer. They were using a lot of chemicals, and they were careless with them too, because there was no, no safety data on that at all. People didn't realize, and so
Yeah.
that was the scene that I grew up in. My mother got excited about right around Earth Day. She got very excited. First Earth Day in 1970, got excited about organic farming, and they went to a conference together. I forget the name of the group. It was the Natural Food Associates, I think, in Shreveport.
Okay.
Yeah, Louisiana. And she, after that, went totally organic on our garden. By then, my father was not farming so much. They'd sold it to my sister and her husband. But anyway, everything was organic from then on in my parents' life. And so then I got into that too, as I was about to leave high school at that point. And then I did 10 years of a little bit of college and a lot of community organizing. And then when we had our children, Jack and I really wanted to raise them on a farm too. And so we bought some land here in Barre, Mass. And that was in 1980, 1982. We moved out and built our house and our homestead. And, we got involved in NOFA, the Northeast Organic Farming Association, and we're principals in that for about 35 years. He was the editor of The Natural Farmer, and I was the executive director of NOFA, Massachusetts. And we were involved in the whole regional organization. So that's a little bit of a sketch of my life. Grew up on a conventional farm, but have been organic really since I, came of age.
Gotcha. Okay. So then, all right. So when you bought your farm in Massachusetts, what kind of was your goals with it at that point? Did you just want to farm? Were you more about raising your own food? Because it is a farm, but it also is a homestead aspect that you guys live there, you build your house, everything's been,
Yeah. I think probably Jack and I had slightly different goals. He only wanted to be a homesteader. I really wanted to be a farmer. So
Okay. Yeah.
we've always done the homestead first and made sure that we have all of our own food. And, we raise a lot of different kind of animals and vegetables and fruit, and we have fruit trees and small fruit, every kind of vegetable and lots of different kinds of meat, pigs, chickens, turkeys, and eggs, and raised cows for a while. But So I think it's our first responsibility and desire has always been to make sure that we're living a kind of I think you could call it a right lifestyle that's in connection with the land, and that we're doing as much of our own food raising as we can, and then sharing those skills because of our both of our interest in education. We're both NILFA is a very educational organization. Actually, I don't know if you remember, but we got you to be a speaker one year.
Yeah, yeah. I actually stayed at your house.
Yeah.
Yes, and back to your homesteading thing, what you just said is I stayed upstairs, I believe, and like upstairs, I forget if it was in a different room than I stayed or in the hallway. I think you guys had a whole bunch that was apple cider vinegar or something was distilling, or maybe it was
Oh, yeah, possibly wine.
wine. Okay, yeah, but they were bubbling away the entire time, so that was pretty cool. And I don't think you realize this, but I went to bed and you were still in the kitchen doing things. And when I got up the next morning, you were already in the kitchen doing things.
Yeah, that's I try to go to bed by 8 or 8:30, but I do get up at 4, so 3:30 now during the
Okay.
solstice more 3:30, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
But no, that's yeah, it's a very cool experience to spend time with you. Um,
okay.
yeah. So then, okay. So let's talk about the property. How big is your farm property?
It's 55 acres altogether, and mostly woods, probably at least 40 acres of woods. We have carved out a place for our house and about an acre of vegetables on this one field, and we have another half acre across the street, and another about a half acre on our pond field. We call it. There's a pond in there, and there's a hayfield, but it's as Jack always says, it's mostly rocks, trees, and swamp. That's what Central Mass is, and especially as you get farther north in Central Mass, it's much more parts of the southern Central Mass are a little bit more open, but we don't have much open land, and so it's just been a carving operation to get enough space that's not too many trees from the scenic road that we live on, and not too much water coming down the middle of one of the fields and in the other places. So
Yeah.
it's much different than Illinois, where I grew up, which was like used to be the best farmland in the world. But as I was leaving, people were crop dusting with airplanes, with all of the chemicals, and they don't do that here in Western Mass. Actually, around the valley, there's a lot of chemical pollution, but not here so much because there just aren't that many farmers. So I'm feeling very grateful that we aren't around all those chemicals.
Absolutely. I went ahead and turned your video off because we were having issues with the uploading. So
Yeah.
that will help with the upload. It should speed it up significantly. So,
Okay.
okay. All right. So then, with the cropland that you do farm, how many acres a year, or when you were doing it more vigorously, how many acres were you up to or farming?
Well, actually, I'm doing it more vigorously now because I was,
Okay.
had a really, really full-time job with NOFA,
Uh
and
huh.
I retired when I was 67, and I'm 71 now, and now I'm farming full-time, which is really something I really wanted to give my hand at before it was too late. We're doing about 2 acres of vegetables. We have about an acre of large fruit with a little small fruit on the side.
Okay.
And I said we have 250 meat birds, and we raise 100 new layers every year, and about 100 turkeys, and we're raising 8 pigs this year. So we have all these various ventures. It's about $160,000 budget this year.
Okay. And so then with that, like your mix of crops, which ones are you doing anything larger in particular? Are you any specialized in anything, or is it just the full range of different crops?
Well, we have a CSA, which we started in 1992, and we're still running that. We have
Okay.
about 140 members in that this year. And then we also sell. So with the CSA, we try to give them as much as we can and they do get peaches and pears and apples and stuff like that too. On top of every kind of vegetable and lots of different herbs. It's still a real mix of whatever we can raise. So we have another account, the Insight Meditation Society, which is in Barre. It's the international headquarters of the Vipassana meditation, and they eat a lot of greens. So we sell them a lot of lettuce and kale and chard and some other things like that too on the side. But mostly it's the CSA, and then them on the side are our. And then we have meat customers that are specifically buy the meat that's not part of the CSA, and they might order a half pig, or 20 meat birds, or
Hmm.
one to 12 turkeys or whatever for the season. So a different significant customer base. Plus we do some salves and soaps and
Hmm.
tinctures, and well, we try to do everything.
Yeah, a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Well, especially when you have the history on the land and you've done the homesteading for so long, it's just natural to make a lot of these things, and then natural just to sell them to your customers.
Right, exactly.
Talk a little bit about your soil type.
Well, I really can't tell you what our soil type is. I'm not a very studied farmer in that sense. I can tell you that it's very rocky. We've pulled out rocks for 40 years, but what I'm concerned about, it really is organic matter, and
Hmm.
worm counts and things like that. And so our organic matter is now somewhere between 10 and 12 on most of our fields. Um, and it's very fertile. I do a lot of foliar feeding with advancing eco agriculture products. I really
Hmm.
follow the work of John Kempf. We do a lot of mulching, we do a lot of cover cropping, and we do the animals on the land at the end of the season. And we're certified organic too. So,
Okay.
when we first came, I had a lot of problems with flooding. Whenever it would rain, we'd have a lot of flooding and water standing in the fields. And we actually had everything raised beds all along because we really needed that. And now we're back, just flatland, beds in place, and no problems anymore with that kind of thing because we've really built the soil
Hmm.
into a really remarkable place.
Yeah, that's incredible. So then, the mulching, is that just with straw or with hay, or what do you do a lot of mulching with?
Yeah, well, last year we were able to buy some straw. That was the first year we'd ever done that. Some
Okay.
big square bales. But this year we're back. The same guy sold us alfalfa hay and square bales. We also have our own hay that we cut, and we use that. And then we buy round bales from our neighbor whenever he has, stuff that he wants to get rid of. Sometimes people their their hay is spoiled because of rain, and we'll get that. We also harvest, significant numbers of oak leaves off of this scenic road. It's all big red oaks, and so in November and December we harvest leaves and have set those aside for mulching. And then we also get wood chips from the town, and so we use a lot of wood chips, particularly on our perennials, particularly around our fruit trees and any of the perennials.
Gotcha.
So whatever we can get our hands on.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about the orchard. You said it's a mix of large fruit and small fruit.
Well, the orchard, we have two sections to our orchard, each of them about maybe one of them's about a half acre, the other one's maybe a third of an acre, and they're mostly apples and peaches and some pears. And we have a couple pawpaws, and we have plums that don't usually do that well. Yeah, and mostly, they're all standard variety trees, so we don't.
Okay.
Again, it's always been from the homesteader's perspective, and
Yeah.
so if we want to get the apples out of the trees, we just shake them.
Yeah.
And I really believe in these older kinds of trees that have, when you buy a standard apple tree, you're going to get with standard rootstock, you're going to get more ability to work with mycorrhizal fungi and all the other biological, you know, the small biology that lives in the soil. When you have these more, accessible, dwarfing rootstocks, you have a very small tree and they fall over in the wind and all that. So we have big, beautiful, maybe 30 feet tall fruit trees that have been around, some of them for 40 years.
Hmm.
Um, and we replace the peaches probably every 7 to 10 years because they tend to die after a while, break or die. But the apples, many of them are here from when we first moved here and planted them. And pears also.
Do you have a favorite apple variety?
Oh, I think probably Baldwin is my favorite overall, but Grimes Golden is a beautiful one. Black Oxford is a beautiful
Mm-hmm.
one. Different, depending on the season, but the time of the season, I should say. But the Baldwin seems like that's really just like, they're so amazing. They're big and tasty, and you can make cider out of them, and you can eat them, and you can store them, and a lot of those older varieties of apples
Yeah.
are really well thought through. The people that worked with him and saved them.
Yeah. So then with the apples, do you do any sort of organic sprays to try to keep them looking good, or do you just let nature take its course?
Well, we do spray with AEA products, again, advancing eco-agro
Okay.
products,
Yeah.
agriculture, and
Yeah.
it's not to make them look good, but to make them be healthy. And so,
Mm-hmm.
when they're healthy, they also look good. Are they, pristine without any kind of scab? Not usually. Sometimes we CSA them. People get
Okay.
them in the CSA share, and then we also make tons of applesauce for ourselves, um, and then we do a lot of cider and sell cider and that too. So, and if any rotten ones we can feed the pigs, and really make use of them one way or the other. I feel like it wasn't really until we started working with AEA that we were able to get consistent apple crop. And that it takes a lot of really good fertility for apples to make them do well. And I feel like we're still on the upward curve with that. We
Yeah.
can we can do better on those, and we still can do a lot better.
So, talk a little bit about the AEA products because you mentioned a couple times how key it is for your fertility. So, give us a little bit of an overview and then kind of like dive into some of the specific things you're
Yeah, I
using.
mean, I think it's really important that what John teaches is something that I've always believed intuitively. But he's just so intelligent. He's got so much experience, worldwide experience, working with farmers all over the world, all different sizes of farmers, and testing and seeing what works. But
Yeah.
it's his vision, and I think it's a very important one. It's not necessarily an organic vision, of the organic movement, but this vision is that um, you know plant and human health, for that matter, is we can have exceptional plant health if we provide the right opportunities for plants to do their best. And that is the opportunity to photosynthesize and it to their maximum. And so a lot of what they use that really enhances all this is a suite of micronutrients and then macronutrients, but also biologicals, and also things like seaweed, and really these products that are biostimulants and things like that. So we use those products, and we work with a consultant and put together very specific sprays for before the trees go into bloom, and then that bloom period, and then the fruit set period, and then the post fruit once you've harvested them, to get them
Mm-hmm.
really in shape for the next year. And they've done a lot of research figuring out exactly what particularly those big fruit trees, what they really need to really produce at their maximum.
Mm-hmm.
um, and before we were using those kinds of sprays, we didn't get any apples. We used to get peaches, but then they would also often have those little black spots on one side of them. And
Yeah.
but now some of the peaches look absolutely pristine, and some of the apples do too. Like I say, we're not completely there yet. Um,
Yeah. But you're
yeah,
you're on
and
the
we
journey,
do other things
as it
like
were.
massively mulch these with wood chips every year, and we use appropriate, as soil tests from Logan Labs would suggest. We do base minerals that we put on. There was a period where we were putting on a lot of calcium and a lot of phosphorus. That was probably stopped doing that 20 years ago. We just really don't need that anymore. We still sometimes need some boron and some sulfur and a little bit of potassium in season for certain things. But in terms of dry minerals, but we do the idea with the foliars is that when you are getting things like cobalt and molybdenum and manganese and all these things at the right time, you're enhancing that plant's ability to photosynthesize at its full potential. That's what, working with their science and their experience, we're able to really do some really incredible things. I mean, our food is really tasty. And this year, particularly, it seems like we had another jump up into really impressive results. So it's a year that the weather is perfect this year. Last year it was last year was terrible, to excessive rain and cold, and but we've had a really good year. So when everything's clicking, then you can really see some amazing results.
Yeah, absolutely. So talk to me a little bit about the mulching of your fruit trees, because we have some fruit trees here. Do you mulch out to the drip line? How thick do you like it?
We do mulch out to the drip line. We usually add another batch of let me think about how many tractor bucket loads. If it's a big tree, we have a Ford 420, we have a Ford 2120. So it's got a big bucket. So a big tree, that's like 30 years old, probably getting like maybe 3 buckets of wood chips. So a lot.
Okay.
And then we've also planted a lot of comfrey under them. Comfrey is a wonderful bioaccumulator that also has makes a nice home for lots of different kind of beneficial insects. So try to really setting the stage there, and then our birds oftentimes go through those orchards in their movable cages, so they're getting chicken manure, turkey manure, in the region of the tree, so they're the soil's very fertile there too.
Yeah. So then with the comfrey, are you chopping that and dropping it during the season, or are you just letting it grow all season long?
I should chop it and drop it, but I do the latter.
Okay. Okay. No, I totally understand. I understand time restraints. So, all right. So let me ask you this. Have you ever done like comfrey tea? Because that's something I've heard about, but we've never done personally.
For the plants? Well, actually, I have a whole 5-gallon jug of molasses out here on the porch, and I have to arrange to get 5 gallons of some raw milk. And, Jerry Brunetti put together this chicken soup for the soil thing. I don't know, it's made with comfrey, yeah.
Yeah.
So I have not done that, but I do make comfrey tea for myself.
Okay.
And I also feed
Okay.
it to the
So
chickens.
the
baby chickens and turkeys all get comfrey every single day while they're brooding. So it's a great feed supplement.
Okay. All right. But wait a minute. You skipped over what I want to stop on, which was the comfrey tea for yourself. I've been told that you don't want to take that internally, but it sounds like you've been doing that. So talk to me a little bit. What's the kind of the ratios, and what do you take it for?
Comfreys, every once in a while, somebody will go on a rampage against some plant. Mm-hmm. And there was a period there where comfrey became, after people have been using it for hundreds of years, all of a sudden comfrey is a dangerous thing. And I always try to ignore all that kind of stuff. So I just drink it. I drink it prophylactically a little bit. I mean, I have Tulsi every day in my tea too, which we raise, and some green tea, which helps with your, antioxidant levels, and a little peppermint and those kind of things, and put them all together in a tea. But yeah, if I didn't see our chickens double in size and, perfect health, when they're in the brooder, if I thought that there was something dangerous about comfrey, it would have shown up in our chickens. But all I see is that they're incredibly healthy, and they go after it. You have to assume that animals know what's good for them for the most part. I know that, of course, cows can eat some dangerous things, but generally speaking, I think that animals pretty much know what's good for them and what's not.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the fact that hummingbirds know when to come back just blows my mind because they're such tiny things. We were actually out in Colorado for a wedding in middle of May. And middle of May in the mountains, and there was still snow all around, and there was hummingbirds. So I was just blown away by that. That was so cool to see.
Are you ready to transform your strawberry growing skills? We want to share our 16 years of experience with growing and profiting from strawberries with you in our free 3-day strawberry workshop. Learn proven techniques for boosting yield and flavor, tips for managing your harvest, and even developing your own U-Pick operation. This workshop is perfect for farmers, homesteaders, and gardeners looking to extend your strawberry growing season and make some money in return. The 3-day online workshop is offered weekly, but register now as it's only available for a few more weeks. Sign up at strawberrysuccess.com. That is strawberrysuccess.com.
All right, so then comfrey. All right, so let's keep going around the homestead here. What other plants, are there other plants that you are like need to be planted around the farm and that you use medicinally?
Well, Tulsi is one that we started using. I can't remember who turned me on to it, but that's like the holy basil from India, and it's
Yes.
been known
Yes.
for generations that's a really super, and it's an adaptogen herb, and it's very calming to your nervous system. So it's a real nice addition to your consumption patterns, I guess. So we raise enough
Yeah.
Tulsi here. I give it out to the CSA too, and I really try to sell it to people. That way. Don't throw this away. Make some tea out of it. So we raise enough to dry enough to have Tulsi tea every day, as it's just an additive because of it. It's so calming. It's really good for your nervous system. It's one of those adaptive herbs. You say, what is it good for? And it's like, there are 15 things. You look it up on the internet. It's just,
Yes.
top of the
Yeah.
line. So.
Awesome. And so then you just harvest that, and do you harvest the plant high enough so that it will regrow?
Yes. We just go around and
Okay.
we cut it several times during the season until the end. Yeah. And then we dry it. We have I think anybody who wants to do a homestead should have some sort of a food dryer. We have an Excalibur. It's got 8 shelves in it, and that's one of the things you can do. So we dry a lot of comfrey. For tea, I also make salve out of comfrey, which is just a phenomenal salve. It's a real healing herb that,
Yep.
put it on things when they hurt. And we're always drying lots of things, but herbs are one of the major things we dry a lot of.
Very cool. So then your CSA season, when's the season run from, and then when does it run to?
Yeah, well, we just started last week. We're in our second week now. So we start usually the 1st of June, and we go for 22 weeks, which is usually somewhere around the end of October. And then we do a fall CSA for the hardcore, which is November. And so altogether, it's 26 weeks throughout the season. So half a year, we're doing a CSA.
Gotcha. And then I'm assuming they start with the greens and peas and things like that. And then do you have any tunnels, or is anything outside?
We do have 3 tunnels. And another aspect I think that's really important to us about our whole situation is that we built our house. Jack was really into all this stuff. He's very smart, and he did a lot of studying. And we built a passive solar house in 1982, and they still had under Carter, he had set up a lot of incentives for people, to go solar. So we were able to get a little money back when we were building our house for going solar. But so the whole front is passive solar, and then we have a wood cook stove in the kitchen. And that is also our hot water, because it's got a hot water jacket in the back of the stove. And so it's really with the sun, and we have a backup, box stove in the basement, but we use it like 3 times a year. We basically heat the whole house with the sun and our little wood cook stove, and where we cook all of our food and preserve all of our food, and we have our hot water. So that's a really important aspect of how we do things. And our hoop houses are just, we got some hoops from somebody who was going out of business, and just built our own hoop houses. One of them's 60 feet long, one of them's 30 feet long, and one of them's 98 feet long, and just put plastic over the top. And so in the winter, we start around October 1st and plant greens, and then harvested them. This year we harvested them till the end of December, and then we had vegetable seedlings ready to go in, and we put chard and kale and lettuce in, and we also had some Chinese cabbages and things like that. So we were able to eat those until just now. We just finally took those out and stuck some tomatoes in for some summer tomatoes, because sometimes the tomatoes, if the weather is not great, they don't always make it outside that well. And these will last a little longer into the season too, into the fall. So that's
Um,
also like greens and then tomatoes and then yeah, something all the time.
Gotcha. Yeah. And then let's talk tomatoes a little bit here. What are your favorite varieties with tomatoes?
Well, that's a good question. I think the who's this little yellow one called Garden Peach? Have you ever seen that one?
I've heard of it. Yeah, I've
Yeah,
absolutely
it's
heard of it.
kind of a dusky yellow, and it's got a different texture to it than most tomatoes. It's
Yeah.
very tasty, very good. I like, again, surprise surprise, the indeterminates, the older varieties.
Yeah.
Um, um, Not so much into hybrid anything. Once in a while, we do have hybrid kale. Our winter boar is our favorite
Yep.
kale, which is hybrid. But most things we really like the non-hybrid versions. Um, most plants.
Yeah. And I'm looking here at a picture. You guys don't use any plastic on the ground, like no plastic mulch.
No, I mean we do use tarps, which is
Uh huh.
was really the tarps. We went no till back in 2014, and we had a very difficult period of at first of how try to figure out how to do that with a lot of weeds and
Yeah.
and then so it was really hard. But we when we got into tarps, really became more efficient at being able to do no till. So we keep those tarps on until right before we want to plant, and then if you do a nice spray, there's a soil primer spray that AEA offers that, really loads up on the nutrition. And then you put the tarp down, and then, all these things are dying under there. And then the earthworms come in, and, massive amounts of earthworms grow. And you take the tarp off, and you've got nothing there, no plants. Um, and so then you have a period of time after you plant to really, mulch if you've got the time or whatever. Those plants will have a much better chance of making it than in a tillage system. It looks really nice, but then, the weeds pop through immediately, and they're usually pretty large numbers. Um, so yes, that's the plastic we use is the tarps, and we take good care of them so that we can use them year after year and not have to, buy new ones all the time. So I'm not, I always people say, well, once somebody was here for a workshop the other day. Well, do you know what these are made of? And I said, yeah. Did you drive a car here to this workshop?
Yep. Yep. No, I mean
So
I struggle with that. Yeah. But it's one of those things. I just if we didn't have plastic on the farm, I don't know how we would be in business.
yeah, yeah. The reason I don't like to use black plastic is because when I am growing food, I want to be feeding the soil as much as I can. And, um, the black plastic, instead of a hay mulch or a straw mulch or a leaves or seaweed or wherever you are and whatever you can get, corn husks, whatever,
Correct.
those things are feeding the soil and they're feeding the soil life. And the black plastic is just keeping it, covered.
Static. Yeah,
Yeah.
static.
So that's, I really, really hate black plastic with a passion, but I try to
Yeah.
control myself.
Yeah, I get that. So we do all our strawberries on black plastic, but our sap consultant or our soil consultant is trying to get us to mulch with like a. He would like to see us mulch with alfalfa
Uh huh.
hay, and then basically because he's like, hey, it's going to feed it the entire year as it breaks down.
Right.
I'm worried that the alfalfa will just completely disappear before we actually get fruit, and it's going to turn into a weedy mess. But we will start to. I mean, we picked up more land this year, so we will be able to do like 3 to 4 acres of covers,
Uh
and
huh.
so we'll probably put down alfalfa and clover mix. And so we'll try it, but I just don't. I'm just worried about it. We did alfalfa one year, and within 3 months, it had disappeared into the soil because the worms loved it, and it just broke
Yeah.
down so fast.
Yeah. Another suggestion for you would be wood chips because they take a little longer to break down, and you can put them down and then, and then add them more. as
Yeah.
time goes on. They do take longer because they're just more lignin in there and such.
Yeah.
But I think that's what we have used wood chips to successfully on our strawberries.
Yeah.
But we also use leaves, and they're also good. No weed
Yep.
seed in there. We have to pull. I mean, I pulled a couple, oak trees today, but you know,
That's yeah, that's not a problem mostly. So then back to the wood chips. Is there any wood chips that you refuse that you won't use, or do you take anything?
well, I get them from the town. They do a lot of work chipping along the road whenever there's a dead tree or whatever. And then once a year, I unload their whole supply. They keep it over at the DPW, and we ask them for them, and a local trucking company will charge us for the delivery. So I'm not too worried about trees so much. I think grass clippings are a concern because they're coming right
Yes.
off of heavily pesticided grass, but the trees themselves, I think, are a little bit less dangerous. And I think the other thing to understand too is when you have a really viable system that your soil can detoxify itself. There's just no question that we have so many toxins in our environment, in our physical environment, in our food, and whether we are, whether it's grown in it or not, the glyphosate is, in the rain, and it comes
Yes.
down
Correct.
on all of us. And
And the aluminum.
yeah, and the aluminum from the chemtrails, right?
Yes. Exactly.
so,
Oh,
so
it's all around us. We can't get away from it.
but I think the important thing, as one learns as a people, and I think we always have to think, soil systems and people's digestive systems, our whole systems, we're all the same, and so to the extent that we can feed ourselves and take care of ourselves in the healthiest way possible, then our microbiota can actually do a little of that detoxifying for us as needed. So that's part of our way of cleansing ourselves, is to really just make sure again that you're getting that cobalt in the soil, and you're getting that molybdenum, and
Yeah.
stuff like that really in small amounts, of course, but they make the system functional.
Correct. Yeah, and I think too because they always talk about how much is in the soil and it's just not available because of the biology. So that when your organic matter is up, when you mulch, when your worms are working, that is really going to push that biology through the roof and help unlock all that underneath the ground.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
God bless the worms, because they're the engine, that
Yeah.
attract, and they feed on the biology, and the biology comes out of their gut when they go through the soil. The castings are so much richer than the what the soil was before the worms ate it, and it's just an amazing machine. And it's just they're amazing kind of livestock. They will work for us for free.
Correct. Yeah. So then, all right. So you mentioned earlier that you're like low till, no till. Talk us through a little bit about how that system works on your farm.
Yeah, well, that's my first suggestion to people, is make sure that you have tarps. I
Okay.
think that's the easiest way to go. And silage tarps are available usually from a lot of different kind of farm stores these days, and they're usually in the 30 foot wide by, you can get them at different lengths. I think even as small as 50, and then 100 and 150 and stuff like that. So um, the tarp is essential, and then the black plastic bags that I've found them on Amazon. They're just black plastic and then a pile of sand. And we tried a lot of different things on, and someone said just put sand in black bags, and they won't blow away on you, because if you try to
Yeah.
use bricks, or if you use pallets or whatever else, it's just not. But you have just the right amount of black plastic bags
Yeah.
around the corners, around the edges of the tarp, and that's the fail safe system. And then check out the soil primer that AEA offers, and you spray that down first, and then put down the tarps. And depending, we at some when we first started, we were putting a lot of tarps down, like in December or January, but they just blew away all winter, and that was our winter activity, was putting the tarps back down. But really, if you're thinking
Yeah.
about really trying to maximize your photosynthesis and maximize the opportunity for the microorganisms who live under the soil to have something to eat, which is really what we're talking about, keeping them alive all winter. So, if, let's say you've planted rye, and then around March 1st here, it depends on where people live, but around March 1st, it's usually the good time to start putting down the tarp. And it's
Yeah.
not a lot of dying happens, but what happens with a black tarp is that the plants will grow up, and then it'll get too hot for them and they kind of implode. And that might happen once or twice in the springtime, and then eventually they'll just die down. And then the snakes and the mice and all the earthworms move in. Oftentimes, when we take off the tarp at the right moment, there's worm castings all over the surface of the soil.
Mm-hmm.
A tarp will work more quickly in the summertime and less quickly in the springtime. It has to do with heat and sunlight and all that good stuff. So sometimes in the springtime, we have to take them off a little early to get some stuff in the ground, and we might find that things aren't quite done yet, but at least it's easier. And we
Mm-hmm.
just use another essential tool for us has been the Rogue Hoe, Rogue. I would encourage everybody to get a
Yep.
handful of those, depending on how many people you have working. They're nice, big, heavy hoe,
Yeah.
and it does a lot of the work for you. And so we just, and then we just make our
Okay.
beds 4 feet wide and 2 foot wide pathways. We don't ever take the tractor on the vegetable fields, and set them up with sticks and strings, very rudimentary in a lot of ways, and plant, and then as possible mulch as quickly as possible. And we got ourselves a bale chopper to cut up the hay really small for the things that are more difficult to mulch,
Mm-hmm.
like seedling onions and leeks and stuff like that. But have not had as much success with that. It's a dirty, dusty, loud.
Yeah.
So we're using that to some extent. But and then now that we're getting these square bales, I guess I don't know if it's particularly that process where they actually chop the hay before they bale it. Does that always happen in those kind of bales? I don't know, but that's nice because it's
Well, it
smaller
depends
pieces.
on yeah.
Yeah,
It depends on the baler. It depends on the farm and stuff like
yeah.
that. So yeah, we are actually trying to move back to when we farmed in New York. We had a big bale chopper,
Mm-hmm.
and I think at that time I only paid like $4,000 to buy it. Now they're 10 grand used.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but we want to get back into that system just because of how nice it is. We don't want to deal with square bales anymore because they're a lot of labor.
Yeah.
And
Little square bales, you mean?
so I,
Yeah.
yes, correct,
Right.
yes, yeah. Big square bales are not as much, but yeah. And it's always the weekend when they're baling, and so I had to pull in guys on the weekend, and yeah. So it's we want to go to large round bales where they can just bale them, and we go pick them up in the field when we can
Mm-hmm.
during the week.
Mm-hmm.
So but yeah, it's that mulching aspect is we're really looking forward to getting back this year to it, because last year we couldn't get any good straw. This year we paid a fortune. We paid probably about $400 to $450 a ton
Mm-hmm.
for it was clean rye. Now they custom grew it for us. They cut it in the pollen, so it was perfectly clean, and there wasn't any seed. There wasn't very few weeds. You had a little bit of chickweed in the bottom, but it was just it was a lot of work. The guys spent a lot of time stacking straw, and I just would much rather be in round bales and just chop it and blow it right out over the whole field.
Yeah. Well, round bales are nice too. Yeah. I mean, it's just kind of catch can, and what's around you and what's available and who's got the machinery and all those kind of things. You
Correct.
have to just kind of
Yeah.
you have to be creative.
Well, correct to your point. Right now, we are sized for square bales. We do
Mm-hmm.
not have the big tractor to run the chopper. So for us to get that, it means investing in about $45,000 worth of equipment.
Mm-hmm.
So, which we're at the size which I think it wouldn't be a problem within a year or two for us to go there. But our budget is a lot more, and yeah, we're moving a lot more here with what we're doing. But again, it comes back to the what is your size appropriate equipment, and I really like your aspect of how you kind of have set up, because it's very appropriate for your scale.
Yeah, I just think the other important thing about our farm is that we're very much human run. And, as my first professional work was as a community organizer, and I realized at that point when I started organizing that was what I was good at, was getting people to do stuff, basically.
Yeah.
Um,
So, because I am going through your Instagram here, and it's full of people, and I think that's something to really point out, and I want you to kind of share about that. Talk about like the education you do, why that's so important to you.
well, I like to be around people, and I like the farm to be kind of like a party atmosphere, you know. I mean, people, and so many people come through, various people of various ages and various needs, and but I think what they find is that, and especially when you're in this part of the country where you have a few more farmers in Ohio, but I suppose not that many because their farms are large, and there aren't very many farmers anywhere, right? But um,
Correct.
it's really important for people to have access to, first of all, fresh air, and good soil, and good food and all those kinds of things. But I think purposefulness on the land, and being part of a greater a greater thing is, makes people happy. And so, we'll take people for 4 hours a week as a working shareholder or a full-time staff member who gets paid, and everywhere in between. And we have some retirees who have a lot of skills and know how to work hard and know how to get down to business. But we also have young people who are trying to find themselves. And one guy who just like graduated from uh, the Chicago Institute of um, Design or something, somewhere in the Loop in Chicago. I don't know, I can't remember the name of the school, but he said, "Well, I got that degree, and now I think I want to farm." So he's working full time on the farm right now. So those people come from all sorts of places. There were several years where we were working specifically with ex-cons, who were drug addiction people, and we also work with a local institution for boys who've been taken out of their homes for one reason or another and living full time in this institution, and they come once a week. And so just a lot of people come through here, and a lot of people who are trying to become farmers themselves will start here, take a year here and then go off and do their own thing, which is fun. I love to work with those people. um, but we try to offer something for everybody, and then we feed everybody. I feed people breakfast if they're here early enough, and everybody always gets lunch and peanut butter balls in the morning. And I'm very much into good health, as much as into good health as I am as into good farming. So that's, both Jack and I feel strongly about all that stuff. So we just try to make it a place where people can come and be who they are, find what they're good at, and take responsibility for those pieces. You need 100 different talents on a farm, so um, it's really good to be able to help people find what they're good at, and give them that space.
And then talk a little bit about the food you cook. Kind of like what type do you try to? How much varying do you do with it?
Well, today we had a stir fry with
Okay.
a pound of our homemade pork sausage, and like a monster bag of stuff that we just harvested: green onions and beet greens and Chinese cabbage and chard and kale. And then we had some potatoes that we had brought out of the root cellar. We had to pull all we're very low on potatoes. We're almost out, but
Yeah.
pull all the sprouts off of them, and roasted those. And then we also have a big salad every day. So that today's salad had arugula in it, and lettuce, and Asian, sorry, and uh, arugula, lettuce, spinach, sprouts. I grow sprouts on the kitchen sink, and then we had some strawberries. because
Okay.
they just come in. So, we basically, that's what was in season, but we also freeze all summer long, and so that we can have winter squash, summer squash, canned tomatoes. I, freeze celery, a celery kind of compote, and then, every kind of frozen vegetable, broccoli and cabbage and cauliflower and corn and peas and beans and blah, blah, blah. And, we make sauerkraut and keep that in the root cellar, and rutabagas and carrots and beets and potatoes. And so all those things, basically so that we can eat from the farm most of the year. We make pork stock out of the bones and the tails and, all of the, what's left from the cutting of the pigs, and chicken stock from the old layers. And
Okay. So wide variety. That's awesome. That sounds really amazing. What would you say to someone who's just thinking about getting started farming, looking back on your career? What kind of advice would you give them?
don't start too big.
Okay.
See if you can spend a year with somebody else, or maybe 2 years. Maybe, I think the people who do the, I'm going to work at 5 farms. I'm going to find the 5, Derek Christensen, he's like, find the five best farms in the Northeast region, and worked with them 1 year at each place. And then he was ready to go on his own, I mean, that's for the person who really wants to do farm well. Then you find the best farmers and you go work with them and learn. That would be smart. I was lucky. I was running the NOFA summer conferences, and so I was putting together the workshops, and so I was always calling people up and getting them for workshops, and chatting them up on the side for about their practices. I learned a lot that way. But I think if you can really actually dig in with somebody who is doing things, and they're willing to tell you about all the things that they did wrong and mistakes they made, and so you can kind of jump ahead and not have to go through all those painful mistakes yourself. And listen to a lot of podcasts and, webinars and all that stuff. I mean, I think, there's a lot of good education out there to be found. Hands-on is the best, I think. But don't start too big, and don't, I think it's important for farmers to, depending on who you're married to, if you are married, oftentimes it's not a farmer. It's somebody who, supports your dream, but they don't want to be dragged down by it. And I think it's really easy to get overwhelmed, especially this time of year. For the next, May, June, July, August, really for at least 4 months. And you have to have that balance, and you have to figure out ways to make sure that you don't get consumed by it. It's a hard profession that way.
No, I think that's great advice. And I think the part is that so often people want to get to a certain size because they see someone else or want to do a certain thing, but don't realize that, again, it's a process, and it doesn't have to happen all at once.
Yeah, and I think, just like we don't want to watch the neighbors and make sure that we have as nice a car as they have, or as nice a house, or if they have this or that, you do your own thing. And if it includes for you to having a second income, and maybe farming part-time, and, being able to have enough amenities in your life so that it doesn't tear your family apart. I think that's really important. So many people, I mean, I don't know if the divorce rate in farmers is higher than it is in most people get divorced these days anyway, but I think it can be very difficult, because people go in very starry-eyed, and then, the first, after you have like 4 weeks of 14 to 16-hour days, it gets tiring after a while, right?
Well, I mean, it's pulling that first row cover off and seeing the carpet of weeds. Isn't that the kicker?
Right. The row covers are very good at making weeds, aren't they?
Yes, yes, that's for sure. Yes, yeah. Well, Julie, I really appreciate you being on today. It's been a privilege to have you kind of share your wisdom, your years of wisdom, and just kind of hear, kind of how your farm has developed over the years. And if I can make it back to Massachusetts, I will definitely try to stop in.
Great. Well, we don't have any wine gurgling up in the bedroom anymore, but we can have. Well, we have something interesting for you to sleep with.
Yes. No, I appreciate that.
So there you have it, another episode in the books. So I'd love if you would hop on over to iTunes and leave us a rating and a review. Those mean everything to us. We love to hear what you're thinking. If you have a podcast guest that you can recommend, please pop on over to the Thriving Farmer Podcast website and leave us a review. That's thrivingfarmerpodcast.com.